Namaste, my beautiful beings of light. Welcome back to my channel. I'm listening to some meditation music. I am going to start this my video today with Egyptian pantheons. Just some different names of different Egyptian pantheons that were here. They're my ancient ancestors, and I just always would like to always have their legacy, their memories always live because they're here. They are awakened. Okay? So and they want you guys to learn about their culture as well as their beliefs, that we all learn from each other. The Egyptians pantheon included hundreds of deities. Many originated as local gods who became the focus of important cults. While some were borrowed from other cultures, some deities were merged or synchronized with each other, blending their attributes, sometimes allowing a lesser god to take on the distinctions and importance of a greater one. Most of the major or universal deities represented cosmic forces, such as the sun or the floods, or were associated with the mysteries of human life, such as birth and death. AKER, the earth god AKER, was the divine personification of the eastern and western horizon, which signified the existence, the entrance and the exit into and out of the nether world. AKER was important in funerary texts and imagery. He was represented as two lions sitting back to back, as a piece of land with a lion or a human head at each end, one facing east and one facing west. AMUN, by the kingdom, c. 1550 c. 1069 BC, AMUN had achieved the position of head of the state pantheon. His national significance was due to the emergence of the local Taban rulers who were successfully in reuniting and ruling the whole of Egypt after a period of disruption. His preeminence also had much to do with this amalgamations with Re, an ancient sun god of the P.O.BOX, to create the deity Amun-Re. He was also combined with the fertility god Min to Mutep, bull of his mother. Amun means the hidden one, and the one of his epithets was mysterious of form, although he was usually represented in human form wearing a double-bloomed headdress. He could also be envisioned as a ram, ovis platyra, with horns curving inward, close to the head. In a hymn of the Papyrus Lydian, 1350, he was described as the Great Honker, a primal goose, from at least as early as the 11th dynasty, c. 2055 to c. 1985 BC. Amun's chief cult center was the temple at Karnak in Thebes, where he was worshipped with his consort, the vulture's mother goddess Mut, and their child, the lunar deity Khonshu, as early as the 5th dynasty, c. 2350, c. 2345. He appeared in the pyramid text accompanied by a consort named as AMUNET. ANAT, as the goddess of war, ANAT was believed to protect the king in battle. Thus, she was often depicted with the lance, axe, and shield. She wore a tall crown surmounted by feathers. ANAT is an excellent example of Egyptian acceptance of foreign deities into their pantheon of gods, because she actually originated in Syria, Palestine, as a deity of the Canaanites and the Phoenicians. She was said to be sister or sometimes the consort of Baal. There is evidence of a cult dedicated to her in Egypt from at least the late Middle Kingdom, c. 1800 BC. Like other benign goddesses, Anat held the title Mother of all gods and Mistress of the sky. At various times she was regarded as the consort of Seth, or the fertility god Men. Anubis, a god of embalming the cemeteries, Anubis was an ancient deity whom prayers for the survival of the deceased in the afterlife were addressed during the early Old Kingdom before Osiris rose to prominence as the god of the dead. Anubis continued to assist the judgment of the dead and accompanied the deceased to the throne of Osiris for the ritual of the weighing of the heart. He was also the patron of embalmers. Anubis had several epithets, including foremost of the Westerners. Example, the dead buried on the east banks of the Nile. He also is upon the mountain, the desert cliff overlooking the cemeteries. Lord of the sacred land, the desert in which the burials were located, the one presiding over the god's pavilion. Example, the place where the embalming took place, or the burial chamber, and he who is in the place of embalming. Anubis was depicted as a jackal or a man with a head of a jackal. Priests or prepared bodies for burials and conducted burial ceremonies are thought to have impersonated the god by wearing jackal masks. Since jackals were common scavengers in Egyptian burials, the honoring of Anubis in this guise may have represented a way of protecting the dead from molestation. It's a little bit of history, guys. You guys gotta learn something. Don't be closed. Open your minds. Astarte. The goddess appears to have been almost unchangeable as Anat. She was also associated with war, particularly with horns and chariots, and was thought to protect the king in battle. She was of Syrian origin, and there is no evidence for her cult in Egypt before the 18th dynasty. c. 1150 c. 1295 BC. She was usually represented as a naked woman riding a horse and wearing the crown or bull horns on her head. She was variously regarded as the daughter of Re or Puta, and she was thought to be one of Seth's consorts. ATUM, the all, as the self-engendered creator god who arose from the primordial waters of chaos, KHNUM, in order to form the primordial mound and to bring the elements of the cosmos into being. As the head of so-called NEITH, the nine gods, he held the title Lord up to the limits of the sky. His cult center was Heliopolis, and he was regarded very much as a solar deity. At some stage, he was synchronized with the preeminent sun god, Re, in order to form the combined deity Re-ATUM. ATUM was very associated with kingship and was believed to lift the dead king from his pyramid to the stars. Later, as a result of the gradual democratizations of funerary religion, he came to be regarded as the protector not only of the king but of all dead people on their way into the afterlife. ATUM was usually represented as a man wearing a double crown of Upper and Lower Egypt, although he could also be portrayed as a snake. Additionally, animals were deemed sacred to him, including the lion, the bull, mongoose, lizard, and dung beetle. Sun King Baba. That was the funerary deity ATUM presence. Baba, at his most dangerous, Baba was believed to murder humans and feed on their entrails and virility, especially those of the king. Sometimes his penis was said to be the bolt of the doors of heaven, and at other times it was the mast of the ferry in the Netherlands. He was believed to be able to ward off snakes and to control darkness and turbulent water. He is represented as a baboon. That's Baba. I have read, according to this strange concept, the eye of the sun god was in fact separate from him and could act independently. In the midst of the destruction of humankind, it manifested itself as Hathor, and then as the more ferocious divine feminine force segment. The eye was also identified. What's the eye? I don't know. That's the eye. The eye of Ra. Okay? That's the eye. Okay? The eye was also identified with Cobra goddesses Waget, one of the protective female deities of kingship, who appears rearing up at the front of the royal headdress, ready to spit poison at the king's enemies. This rearing snake is known as the Utareus. Geb, as the divine personification of the earth, Geb was a god of fertility. For this reason, he was sometimes colored green and was visualized with plants growing out of him. He is often depicted reclining beneath the arched body of his sister consort, the sky goddess Nut. In the creation myth of Heliopolis, Geb and Nut were the two children of Shu and Tut-Nut. They were lovers, but were forcibly separated by their father Shu, the god of air. Geb was always presented in human form, sometimes with an erect penis. He occasionally wore the red crown of Lower Egypt, but more often he had white-fronted goose on his head. Thus his daughter Isis could be described as the egg of the goose, like his father Shu. He had a dark side to him, which was expressed in the funerary religion. He was considered to be able to trap the dead in his body. Earthquakes were described as the laughter of Geb. Hathor. Hathor, a mother goddess. Hathor was associated with love, fertility, sexuality, music, dance, and alcohol. She was sometimes represented entirely, anthropomorphically in the form of a cow or as a woman with cow ears. When in human form, her headdress could be one of cow's horns with solar disc or a falcon on a perch. She was also a sky goddess and was regarded as a vast cow who straddled the heavens with her four legs, marking the four cardinal points. So we're talking about the deities. We're talking about the gods and goddesses, the Egyptian pantheons. In various contexts, she was honored as the Lady of the West or Lady of the Western Mountain, Lady of Babus, Lady of Turquoise, the Lady of Fiance. The west or the Western Mountain refers to the place of the setting sun and thus, by an analogy, the realm of the dead. Babylon was a port on the Lebanese coast, important for Egyptian trade and particularly in the importing of cedar wood. Since Egypt had no native timber for the constructions of boat or large buildings, Egypt exploited turquoise mines from pre-dynastic times, especially in the Sinai Peninsula. A temple to Hathor has been found at the mining site of Sarabet el-Qadim. Faience was much used glazed ceramic material composed primarily of crushed quartz or quartz sand, and usually a blue-green color, perhaps a cheaper imitation of turquoise. Like Isis, Hathor was considered to be the mother of the falcon deity Horus, and thus the king who was closely identified with Horus. Her name means the house of Horus. However, inscriptions of the temple of Horus at Ephesus refers to Hathor marrying this deity. The king was sometimes depicted being sucked by goddess in cow form, as shown by a wonderful statue in the Cairo Museum from Deir el-Bahari of the 18th dynasty pharaoh Amenhotep II, c. 1427, c. 1400 BC, enjoying just such substance. Although she was also sometimes identified with the Eye of Re, she appeared on other occasions as the sun god's daughter. From the Odd Kingdom, c. 2686 to c. 2181, Hathor's chief cult center was at Dendera. Her festivities appear to have been subtly debauched. An emblem of her cult was the sistrum, or rattle, which would have been shaken as part of the ritual proceeding. The existing temple on the site dates to the Greco-Roman period and is dedicated to the triad Hathor, Horus, Hathor's son, who played the sistrum in her honor. This is Hathor. Who don't know who's Hathor? This is Hathor. Okay. Horus, the king of Egypt, was closely identified with Horus from the beginning of dynastic history. c. 3100 BC. The god was presented as a falcon or with a head of a falcon, and with one of the most obvious symbols was the Eye of Horus. In one version of the myth, the contending of Horus and Seth, Horus had both his eyes gouged out. In other versions, he lost and then regained only his left eye. In other words, he lost his left eye as the weaker of the two. It came to be associated with the moon, while the right eye was associated with the sun. Because in both instances his eyesight was eventually cured, his eyes came to symbolize healing. Yujat literally means sound. It was used as a protective amulet, symbolizing strength and protection, and also represented the waxing and waning moon. Horus' name means he who is above, and is probably linked to his status as a god of the sky and to the high soaring of the falcon. As Horus in the horizon, he was called a Hormakhet, and in the capacity he was an amalgamated with the solar deity Re to become Re Hokriti. From the late period c. 747 BC, he appeared in his child form, Horpakhert, from the Greeks called Harpocrates, on a form of stela known as a Sigbus of Horus. He was usually depicted treading crocodiles underfoot and grasping snakes, scorpions, and other such dangerous creatures. It was always clear that he was extended to be a child because he was pictured naked, sporting a particular hairstyle known as the side lock of youth. The idea behind this aspect of the god was that since Horus as a young boy had managed to survive certain dangers, a ritual could be performed using his image to protect children from similar threats, or perhaps to cure snake bites and scorpion stings. Water was poured over the KHEPRI, which covered the spell, causing the liquid to imbue with their magical potency, so it could be ritually imbibed or applied. Horus was honored as an element of the divine triad at the cult center of Abydos, but he is most associated with the temple of Edfu, ancient Meson, where he was worshipped as part of the triad, with this consort Hathor and their child Harsomatus. He was closely associated with Heracanopolis, town of the Hawk, ancient Nekon, in the south, and a town called Bethet in Delta, as Horus of Bethet was presented as a winged sun disk. Wow. I'm going to go to Isis. Well, Huhan is another one. The frog-headed god, Hun, was the personification of a formlessness and infinity. His consort was a snake-headed goddess, Hahut. He was often represented anthropomorphically holding in each hand a palm rib, the hieroglyph for the year. That was him. This one. Then I'm going down to Isis. Isis, like Hathor, Isis was a mother goddess and was identified more especially as mother of Horus and thus of the king. The image of her sucking Horus, especially found in the form of numerous bronze figures dating to the late and Greco-Roman period, is reminiscent of the Christian mother and child icon. Isis tended to be represented as woman with a throne, a solar disk between cow horns on her head. She was sometimes guarded as the personification of the throne, the hieroglyph of her name in this image of a throne, and her lap came to be seen as the throne of Egypt. She was also frequently depicted with huge sheltering wings. She was part of the ANAT of Heliopolis, and as consort to Osiris, the mother of Horus, she appeared in triads of deities worshipped by Abdus. Her best-known cult center was on the island of Feli, on the southern border of Egypt, near Aswan. She was particularly closely associated with magic. Her ability to heal and transform herself into any guise she desired are evident in the myth about her. Two important manifestations of this goddess were the great white soul of Heliopolis and the Isis cow, which gave birth to the sacred Ibis bull of Memphis. Her following eventually spread beyond Egypt to Syria, Palestine, Greece, and throughout the whole Roman Empire, and she was worshipped until well into Christian time. That was Isis. No, that's not Isis. I'm sorry. That's not Isis. Wrong. Okay. KHEPRI. The god KHEPRI, which literally means he who is coming into being, was a creator of solar deity. He was represented by, as described, a dung beetle, or as a beetle-headed man. The choice of a dung beetle to portray a creator god and the manifestation of the rising and significance because of the activities of such a beetle. It was observed to roll its eggs in a ball of dung along the ground, and the ball was identified with the sun. The baby beetles were seen to emerge from the dung as if life was emerging from the primeval mound. And so dung beetles were thought capable of spontaneous creation. From the Middle Kingdom 2055 C till c. 1650 BC onwards, the scrap form's amulet was very popular and was worn in bracelets and necklaces. Scraps were used as funerary talisman and were placed over the heart of the deceased to keep it from confessing sins during integration. KHNUM was an ancient deity represented as a man with the head of a ram, and in the ram or entirely ram form. The type of ram used to portray him was the earliest one to be domesticated in Egypt. The obvious long gips, which had curly horns extended horizontally from his head. The ancient Egyptians from the rams was Ba, which was also the word for a concept akin to our personality, possibly those non-physical attributes which make any one human being unique, or perhaps the moral essence of a person's motivation and mode and movement. It may well have been thanks to the Egyptian love of ponds, and KHNUM came to be ancient deity and was also regarded regarded as a bout of the sun god Re, and is also the deity was represented with the ram's head while passing through the nether woods in his solar barquette. Certainly the bout of the dead appeared to be more mobile than their Ka spirit, connected with Khnum's capacity as a creator god, was his role as patron deity of potters, and his association with the fertile soil, the annual inundations, and Nile cataracts. His chief cult center was situated on the island of NEFERTEM, at the first contract at the southern border of Egypt. Another important temple of KHNUM was located in Esna. Here was the lioness goddess Matsat, and it was here that the festival of Potter Wheel was celebrated each year. That's the beetle. Right here. And see the eyes of Ra. That's the beetle. This is Khonsut. Was depicted as a young man, usually wrapped in the bandages of mummies or other tight-fitting garments, and carrying the royal crook, veil, and scepter. I got was 22:32. The son of Amun and Mat Kasu name means wanderer, which probably refers to the passage of the moon across the sky, as he was a lunar deity. In the late period, he was also considered an important god of healing. His chief cult center was at Thebes. Called the frog-headed god Kuk, was the personification of darkness. His consort was the snake-headed Conket. Min, a god of fertility. Min was represented in semi-mummified human form, his left hand holding an erect phallus and his right arm raised. The key feature of his headdress was two tall blooms. The emblems of the cult were the letters and an unidentified shape, which could possibly be a door bolt, a barbelled arrow, a lightning bolt, or a pair of fossil shells. He was a particularly ancient deity who was also regarded as a protector of the mining regions in the eastern desert. His main cult center was Koptos and Akhenum, which the Greeks called Panopolis because they identified their god Pan and Meme. He was sometimes described as the son of Isis, but on other occasions he was said to be her consort, with Horus as their son. But by the New Kingdom, c. 1550, c. 1069 BC, he had merged with the Theban deity Amun. NEFERTEM. This deity was associated with the lotus blossom and was represented in male human form with blue lotus on his head. His headdress sometimes also incorporated two plums and two necklace counterposes. The creation myth of Hieromonopolis Magnus statues that the sun rose from the primeval lotus flower, and Nefertem was closely linked with the sun god. The pyramid text of the Old Kingdom after referred Nefertem as the lotus bloom, which is before the nose of Re. His universal importance is expressed in his title, Protector of the Two Lands, referring to the Upper and Lower Egypt. Nefertem was worshipped at Memphis as the son of god Ptah and the lioness goddess Sekhmet. So he was sometimes depicted as lion-headed. He was also occasionally referred to as the son of the cat goddess Bastet, or to complicate matters further, as the son of the cobra goddess Waget at Butu. And I'm gonna let it go there. There's a lot of these deities, a lot of their, oh my God, their creations, and there is a whole bunch of beautiful pictures of our ancestors. I mean, it's a beautiful potteries that they have found from our ancestors. They're finding even more the reasonings, the depictions of the Catholic Church and the churches, and what the symbolisms was of the past and how they changed to the present, how a lot of things were very much more manipulated than anything. But you have to do your own research. You have to learn on your own. You have to take what resonates and leave the rest alone. Whatever resonates with you, whatever you don't resonate, it's okay. We are all here learning. We learn from each other. This is past. This is history that needs to be documented. This is history that was taken out, the history books. And it has to be put into the history books. The history books have to be changed, to be honest with you. Christopher Columbus did not discover America. Okay? Just wanted to put that out there. Christopher Columbus did not discover America. So, we were old. It's okay. We're learning. We pick up books. Don't be closed to it. Namaste. Bye.